I will just do the bio and then I'm going to hand it off to Jeffrey. Early in life, Jeffrey Grundtner passionately studied astronomy, earth sciences, and the physical sciences. He was and is a lover of earth and sky, spending many days and nights marveling and experiencing both. Jeffrey had a near-death experience at age 11, which made him an empath and a seer and shaped his entire life. He has been taught by a Native American medicine man, studied a very grounded form of psychic development, and studied with very gifted spiritual healers. His astrology readings are full of compassion, insight, and wisdom, and are often life-changing. I've included his website, also his email address, in the links, and also the link to the sign up for the April 8th campsite musical festival, where Jeffrey will hold his ceremony on that day. And he'll explain more about that, but the link is there for Willow Springs.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here, and welcome back those who were in the January, the Overlook of the Astrology, and then some new folks, friends that I've just met and that have been hanging with me recently. And so, yeah, I really appreciate you coming and listening to what I have to say. The bio was a little bit tailored to the astrology, and while this is about the eclipse, this is also really a lot about how that interfaces with the earth and with humanity and really all of our natural world. It's so that we kind of expand that a little bit, that those are some of the other emphases in my pathway, that I've worked with the earth extensively, with the earth energies, that goes beyond, the notion of sacred sites and ley lines is the first thing people think about, but there's a lot more, many, many layers to it, and I'm just going to leave it at that. So I introduced the idea at the last time, and again, so that's just for the folks who are coming back, that I was, first of all, that I've done this astronomically or astrologically timed geomantic work for over 30 years. And this eclipse coming up just offers a great opportunity for us to engage with it ceremonially and energetically. And I'm going to explain a little bit later here in the presentation some of the ways that can happen, why it's possible, or some of the ways that we do this work can really enhance and amplify the intentions that we might set at these particular times. And then just a couple of other things. I was so again, this is for the folks who were here, but in the beginning of January, I hadn't completed the second leg yet. Let me back up because I'm assuming too much. So I was guided to do a ceremony, and that it should be at the region where the 27 total eclipse path that crossed the United States, and this 2024 eclipse path will cross. And that happens to be in southern Illinois, not far from Carbondale in general. And I wasn't getting a good, even though I started fairly early, I wasn't able to find the place, and I would be just kind of one step behind, even though I was, over a year out, because there's people wanting to be there. And so, kind of fast forwarding, I had almost thought, well, maybe I'll just be doing this on my own and I won't have ceremony, this and that. And I ended up running into a lovely singer-songwriter who recommended that I contact Willow Springs because they are in that region, and that they were planning to do a music festival down there. And so this was just very recently, and I had to travel down there to go to their music festival this fall, and it's wonderful land, wonderful people, um, and in some ways might not fit the way that I were typically do these powerful spiritual energies, but in other ways fits totally because just the idea of music and and the way Robin and Andy are curating all of this uh, to bring in more positive message music, and that music lifts us up and it helps support something that I call coherent emotion, which is a very powerful place to come from. I'm going to be using concepts tonight that I won't have time to explain fully. You can intuit kind of what they mean. And my plan was to do trainings and so on. And man, the time is short now. There's less than 60 days. Um, so I'm still going to do my best to get all that done. But if there's things you don't understand, then please just keep trying to pay attention because I'll be posting more things as we go along that helps put these into context. So moving on, once I knew that, okay, this was going to be the place, it's going to work, Robin and Andy, they're the owners of Willow Springs, were after they hung out with me for a couple of days, were open to the idea, and we've had another visit, and so this is going to be it. This is where we're doing it. But then on the ride home, the spiritual guides that I work with said, okay, now you have to go trace the path, the eclipse path, and do ceremonies along the way. If any of you have looked at what the eclipse path is or can contemplate what that would entail, it was like, well, that's insane. But I've been known to do insane things, especially when spirit strongly recommends it. So we did. The first journey was out to the far northeast, out to the Atlantic, to the North Cape of Prince Edward Island. That's where the center line of the path. I didn't go all the way to Newfoundland because that was even too crazy for me. I'd love to visit there someday, but there, all the way back to central Illinois, and then I had to come home for a while, got delayed, got sick, blah, blah, blah. Then waiting for a window when I could go and do the second leg, and just completed that last week. And then I went to that wonderful Sky Astrology conference that, well, that might not be on the recording, but a couple of our people that I met there are online here. And so I got back, did a little bit of work, and here I am. So I'm saying all of that just in as much as, forgive me if this isn't a perfect presentation. I have no PowerPoint for you. I just have my words in my heart and my waving hands to try to describe to you what we're doing. And the description that I sent to Hope, probably not everybody got that, and I don't have that here to read to you, but some of the imagery is to describe what we've done on the land so far is like we're laying out a star dragon on the land from southern Texas into Canada. I didn't go to Newfoundland, and I couldn't really go into Mexico. The eclipse path enters land at Mazatlan, and it leaves at in Newfoundland. But it actually starts well out into the Pacific, almost to the date line, almost where you might say the mythic Lemuria started, and it ends way out in the Atlantic, off the coast, a long ways out, but still off the coast of Europe, as far north as France and Ireland. So Lemuria to Atlantis is one way to think about it too. But we aren't covering that. We're going into something that's a little bit more direct in some ways. And so what I wanted to do, what I can remember, without having to read it because I don't have it here, is what were the intentions behind this?
I'm
I'm going to
putting it in
start with that.
chat. I'm
Pardon
putting it
me?
in chat. I'm putting it in chat if you
Oh, you're
want.
putting it in chat.
There
Okay,
it is.
great,
Yep.
great. So, but yeah, so that'll be the written part, but there were, I'll start by saying that there were many intentions that go beyond the notion of a renewal for the United States, because it really, we want to extend this to humanity, to the whole planet, to consciousness itself. And not every stop was inside the path, but all of the places where we did the intentions of the ceremony and did the put the crystals and stones in the ground. There are 22 of them stretched out from from Prince Edward Island down to Eagle Pass, Texas. And so that's kind of this star pattern laid out on the land. And I haven't actually plotted it out because it was things that I was guided to. I want to plot it out on the map, see what it looks like from above. So that intention that for the United States, if we were to rewrite, or I did tried my hand at a rewrite. I don't know if I should call it a rewrite, a modern version, let's say, of the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. And now let's see how well I can do while I'm nervous to remember my own words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all human beings are created equal, and that we are a part of the natural world, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are the right to a personally sovereign life, the liberty to be exactly who we are, and the right to pursue fulfillment, spiritual development, and happiness in an equitable economic system, in concurrence with our responsibility to all humanity, the life of the planet, and to future generations. And if you resonate with that, then please join us in what we hope will, in our little small way, help shift and bring forward some of the better potentialities of all that's going on. So a couple of things that I won't be covering tonight are an in-depth look at the astrology itself, like what the chart says. I'm going to be talking about certain components that are like the prime things. And one of the things that I've realized, I mean, I've said that I've done this for really for decades and lifetimes, but some of the things that I think may be fairly simple as I was trying to put out the concepts and things like that in the YouTubes, that I was, trying to go into too much depth. So I'm doing a lot of adjusting. I had some advice from a lovely person we were all in for this astrology conference in Savannah, Georgia, so we could see the sky, the night sky, particularly the morning sky, because there's beautiful stuff going on in the morning sky with Venus and Mars and the moon last week. But anyhow, so a person that had come in and I was going into all this detail, and she looked at me and she says, don't try to polish your videos. Because as I said at one point, and I'll say it again, I have these videos, I have these things, I couldn't do them at the as I had thought I could at the time we were at the place and doing a ceremony, which I thought would be great. But number one, we were so immersed in the energy of the ceremony. And so often nature responded with such power, there was no way to but to be immersed. And I think that was, me being overly optimistic and spirit really knowing what had to happen. But then I've got these things, these pictures and these clips that I kind of want to blend. Well, that's just a whole other learning curve. Anyway, so Stephanie said, don't bother trying to make a polished, perfect video. Just do it. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Just to share with people and maybe down the road, this whole amazing odyssey, because it has been truly an adventure and an amazing experience. We can fill that out better. But so what I want to do tonight, I'm going to go into three segments of some of these components of how these things work and interface. But first, I want to tell you part of the story. Um, oh, and because I had to come into the office for better internet, I have my longtime friend and assistant who actually traveled with me. She's done this work with me before, and it helps keep a male-female balance. She's here as an in-person audience. Can you grab the sage and the crystal for me, please? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a minute and I have to pay attention to time, something I'm not always really great at, because I get going and what's time? So I'm going to do a brief meditation that will help us to get grounded and centered. And if that's something that resonates with you, then follow along. Or you can do your own, or if it doesn't, then just, sit quietly. Just have the intention of being, here, present with everyone, grounded in the earth. All right, so sit comfortably and take a couple of deep breaths and exhale and give it a little bit of an audible sound. Letting go of any tension that might have gathered for the day and then your body, and let your body just relax fully. And if it helps you to tone, I may do an Om here, and you can do that. Om. Om. Deep breath, and now you can keep your eyes open or closed. If you can close them for this part of the exercise, and just bring your attention to the base of your spine and allow a grounding cord of your energy to descend down through your chair, through the floor, and down through the building where you are located, and through the earth beneath it, through the ground that is beneath it, through those layers to the bedrock, and let that grounding cord pass through the bedrock and through the crust of the earth, the granite layer, and into the first molten layer. And let it pass quickly through the molten layer and descend down through the mantle and through the second molten layer until you reach the center of the earth, at the core of the earth. And say hello to Mother Earth at this time, the being that is the essence within our planet. And ask her to receive your hello. Open the chakras in the bottoms of your feet, as well as that connection to your lower spine, and allow earth energy from the level and the frequency that is right for you tonight to rise up. And you can breathe it up. Feel it come up through your legs and through the chakras in the backs of the knees and up into the pelvic area, and joining that energy rising up directly into that first chakra. Allow the wisdom of your first chakra to distribute that energy throughout all of your body. That earth energy just, and going to those places where you may need extra healing on this evening. And then allowing that to be infused and diffused through all of your other bodies, through your auric body and chakras. And now bring your attention to your head crown center and open your crown center, sufficient for tonight, for this purpose. Call down more of your own light from the Antakarana, from your higher self. Bring more of your own soul light down and into the third eye area, that sixth chakra, and allow it to fill and open the sixth chakra, and allow it to come down into your throat, to open and fill your throat, and allow it to come all the way down into the home for your soul and your heart. Opening your heart and allowing your self to center there. You're bringing your energy into the heart and opening to the experience that you will have today. And the wisdom of the heart to distribute your soul energy throughout the rest of your chakra system, throughout your body and your aura. And take a moment to recall all of your energy. Just do this by intention. And to send away any energies that don't belong with you for tonight and for your purpose. Take a few deep breaths. And if you'd like to take it one step further to get your heart and your mind in coherence, all you have to do is embody a state of gratitude. Find something to be grateful for. Anything, just so that you feel gratitude. And you will begin to feel your heart and your mind, the energy systems therein, will find a harmony and a synchronizing that is coherence. And when you're ready, come on out and we'll begin. So I work with several traditions. As Hope mentioned in the beginning, I was adopted by a Dakota medicine man. I've walked with the Native people for 37 years. I've walked with the sacred pipe, the Chanupa, for 32, I don't remember, long time. But as you might have also been able to tell, I've done a lot of work with Tibetan Buddhist practices, and some other ways too. So we allow that more universal way. I mean, even including, because I know there are some people here who are where Christianity is their primary path, and I certainly was raised in that tradition. And so the mystic Christianity, the principles of the great teacher, are also an important part of the spiritual work that I do. So I'm burning a little sage, and I'm virtually just going to smudge all of you off if that is you're willing to receive. Brush yourself down. That's just an added that. Now, that meditation I did is the basis of what this earth web weaving, the geomantic work that I do. That's the beginning point. It's also the beginning point of the particular kind of body soul integration work that I teach. AKA it's a form of psychic development, very grounded psychic development that helps us bring body and soul together fully. And what we do, and if you join us, that'll be part of the training, is to work with that, and then how we extend that to use our energy to engage more fully with the magic between earth and sky. And in particular, I call it earth web weaving. A lot of people kind of know these things as grid work. I've chosen that moniker because as I said, there's many more layers than what some people do. I'm not passing any judgment on what other people do. I just have quite a plethora of things that I bring, and so I'm choosing to call it that, because we're weaving these spirit webs, these energetic webs of love and compassion, and these intentions into our Earth's energy system. And that too is a whole series of seminars or whatever that we won't get to. I think one of the things I wrote when I took notes this morning is that what's important, I'm describing a lot of things right now that implies that there's a lot of complexity, and there's lots of layers. But if you want to be there, don't worry about that. We can attain these alignments by just bring your whole effing being with humility and with love and compassion in your heart, and you will be aligned in that moment. All right? So, all right, so I want to start now with, I already shared how I might modernize the preamble to the Declaration. So that gives us some layer of the intentions. Those are sort of specific to the United States, but obviously those are kind of universal things. We're saying humanity, and we're saying the natural world. It's not just for those of us that happen to be here. But having said that, what I'm going to do is tell you some of the story of the journey that we took, that happens to represent a kind of a progression in it. I guess I need to share one more thing first, which is that part of what these ceremonies are doing, and there'll be a video or a writing where it really elaborates the full intentions, so that there's deeper understanding of that. But one of the ways that this works is that these various places on the earth, they hold energy, right? And they hold, just like the Akashic holds our story, well, so it is in the earth. And it's quite vast and extensive, but in the layer where human beings, where we two-leggeds have interacted, we've left energy, and we've left imprints. And also, one other thing is that oftentimes people are working specifically with sacred sites. Like, the most common question I get is, well, did you go to Serpent Mound? And I have to respond, well, not for this particular work. Of course, I've been there, and I've connected that in with other work, et cetera, et cetera. But because it wasn't in the eclipse path, now we did include some things that were outside of it because they were important to the story, but the idea wasn't just to go to the high vibration places, or the places where this these kinds of things were done before, but rather what we're trying to do is bring about a renewal, a reset and a renewal. So this is about bringing up energies that have to be looked at, transmuted and transformed and turned into creative energy again, particularly where they're stuck. And there is a direct correlate between those energies that are held in the earth and the kinds of energies that are held in our collective unconscious and subconscious. And again, I'm just going to leave the statement there so I don't have to discuss that fully. I do in other ways, other places. But so a lot of the places we went to visit, some of them were wonderful and high vibe. A lot of them were places where there was stuck energy that we needed to engage with. And it was spirit that was guiding it. And so that's this. The three components I'm going to tell you, I'm going to do in this telling and this sharing, are kind of fractals. You know, all of these places are fractals of this whole hologram. And the other thing I will, let's see, how do I want to do that? Do I want to say that first, or give me a minute to gather how I want to do this? I think let's just start. So near the middle end of the path, we ended up not tracing it in the way that the eclipse path will follow, starting in the south and going to the northeast, but in the opposite direction. There was practical reasons for that, but there was also layers that I didn't even fully understand until we actually did the work. And so these three pieces are going to start at Mount Ida, Arkansas. And this is one of those beautiful high vibe places, right? For those of you who don't know, most of the quartz crystals, I don't know about most, but many of this is a place that, 250 million years ago, the earth said, here, let's make all these awesome quartz crystals. So in those mountains down there, in the Blue Ouachita Mountains, are untold tons and numbers of quartz crystals. And human beings have been taking them out of the ground, again, probably for centuries, but in the known history, for a little bit, maybe up to 200 years, and then especially once people in the consciousness movement have begun to understand the spiritual capacities of these crystals as being partners to us and aiding us, started bringing them out of the ground. So if you have a quartz crystal, there's a good chance it came from Arkansas. Or I should say, if you have 10, it's a good chance 5 of them came from Arkansas. So Mount Ida. When we approached Mount Ida, it was in the afternoon, late in the afternoon, and we were coming from our last ceremony and driving into the place, and it was nearing sunset. And the golden light of that late evening sun was lighting up the mountains, and the wind had settled into the easy chair of the saddles between the hills. And that golden light lit up the contours so that you could really see the sculpture of these ancient hills. And as we were kind of rushing in because we didn't think we had a minute, couldn't stop and take a photograph. So it's etched in my mind. And we we drove up to where, as close as to where we could get to a place where that was called Avatar Mine, of all things. It's closed, but near there. And there was no way to go any further, and we certainly couldn't hike up there. So all along the way, there were the raven was ever present, and vulture was ever present, and many other things that were the intelligence of nature were connecting and flowing with us, if you will. So we found this spot beneath these southern pines, these towering southern pines in the creek, and there happened to be crystals just laying in the earth there in the woods. And there was a certain irony in taking this beautiful crystal and putting it back in the ground, except it, because that might have been where it came from in the first place. But it's not really an irony because of the first and foremost things that we can do in giving back energetically with gratitude. So this crystal is not only carrying our intention, but it is a gift of gratitude. And I'm just going to insert here, a lot of people go to a sacred site, and we all want to experience it and feel, well, what can we get? The most important thing you can do at any of these chakras of Mother Earth is to give thanks, gratitude, love, and compassion. And for everything that we take from nature, and I know some of you know this, but it is worth repeating. I'm setting this up somewhat as a ceremony, so I'm speaking to all Mitakiapi right now. So this beautiful stone that any one of us might like to have went back into the ground with gratitude. And then we left and we had a beautiful, amazing experience in a mountain cabin called the Irish Rose. Most of the places along the way, some of them were dive hotels, a couple of them were good, but it was mostly basic, clean bed, a place to shower and get on the way. But this was exquisite. And this was a gift back to us. I say us because I just mentioned Fenella is a longtime friend. She's done this ceremonial work. It's nice to have a traveling companion. I was going to do this leg by myself, but she was available. So we traveled together. And that also, as I said, it's not absolutely necessary, but I do like to do this work with, part of the intention is this balancing and bringing into this a new way, the way that we live together as men and women, and the way that we understand and embody our masculine and feminine sides, etc. So when I say we, that's who I'm referring to, as well as maybe the entourage of the spirits who guide me. But we got to spend a really lovely time there. And there's a fuller story that goes along with that, but that was going to be the first clear morning that next morning. So I got up and dark skies, so beautiful night skies, and Jupiter high above the evening before, and Orion, and so on. And got up early so that hopefully I could see Venus and Mars. Mars proved to be impossible, which it's still doing. being impossible. It's not visible. It's supposed to be there in the sky in the early morning. And just watching this sunrise on the land. So this is that component of us coming back into communion and community with the life of our planet. And then we had to complete the ceremony, the pipe ceremony that went along with putting the crystals in the ground. And so we moved along and we stopped along a ridge that seemed like a good place. And I was kind of checking it out. And then all of a sudden, from nowhere, a flock of 7 vultures came, circled overhead, came down low, greeted us. We greeted them. Alo matakias. And the importance of vulture medicine, the secret of it lies within the Latin name, which is catharsis aura. Catharsis aura, the golden purifier. Now, I'm checking my time, so I'm not going to go into a more elaboration about vulture medicine. But, well, I'll tell you a little bit, because vultures have the capacity of cleaning up the death, they help remove and recycle the dead carcasses from the land. That prevents the spread of disease, and it converts that death energy into new creative energy, bringing it back into the life cycle. So they serve a very important function. And spiritually, vulture, when we are in partnership, and do the same for whatever they are called to do. So what was so important in our travels is that there was a whole lot of, dead carcasses of consciousness that needed to be transmuted. So those vultures showed up, and we knew that was where the pipe ceremony was to take place, for Mount Ida and the Blue Washita Mountains, and the connection to the whole. We then moved on into the corner of Oklahoma that is supposed to be the Choctaw Nation, and still is, except the dominant culture figured out how to steal most of that back again. So they're confined in a portion of what they were given back in the early 1800s. I'm sorry that there's going to be a little of that in here, because we traced a part of the Trail of Tears. The northern route of the Trail of Tears goes across southern Illinois. There's many, many things in southern Illinois. So when we talk about those stories, and that's where we're doing our main ceremony for the eclipse itself, and where there are many of these star points, because it's so emblematic of some of these things that we're intentionalizing. So there was a ceremony there, and again, the signals from nature as to where it should go. And then we needed to go to Dallas next. And by the way, just to give you an idea of the miles driven, that first leg to the northeast, because we went up and around Lake Superior and all the way out to Prince Edward Island and back, was 4,735 miles. The second leg was 3,750. So we had to cover a lot of miles in between these really intense experiences. And so we had these moments of beauty across a couple of days, and then it was time to go to Dallas, a 5-hour drive. I already had the hotel booked, and we needed to go to Dealey Plaza. And for those of you who don't know or don't remember, Dealey Plaza is, among other things, but it's most famous or infamous for where John F. Kennedy was shot. So part of what I knew would be there was here was an instance of political violence that, one component was choosing rather than a peaceful and means. And that set off a whole decade of political violence, all of the assassinations, etc. And I don't know if people may have already done some work, some spiritual work to release that, but this needed to happen, and it never hurts for there to be more. But I can also tell you that it's kind of still there, and there's a way in which that we engage with these certain places that helps to reinforce these. So part of the teachings that I want to share is how we bring different intentionality in within our alignment, a different way to engage with the history. We don't change the story, we change our relationship to it. And then it can't be so prone to emerge again and repeat, for people to keep calling on that unconsciously. Because as I said, there's a direct correlate with what's left in the land until we go back and bring it to light and have it go through its alchemy. It stays there. And there's a way in which it radiates out, and we can just keep calling on it from our collective unconscious and reinforcing it in the land, and the cycle goes on. So anyway, we're getting ready to go, and I'm sitting there in Broken Bow and just exhausted, just spent. It's it's dark by now, and I'm like, man, I'm so tired. I need to nap. I took a 20-minute nap. Well, I probably had more to do with what I needed to do on the other level than actually getting rest, though I needed that too. So I slipped into a dream very quickly. And in that dream vision, I could see Dallas, Texas. And above it, not 7 vultures, but a whole flock darkened the sky. I was like, whoa, okay. I don't know what's waiting for us, but there's some serious dark shit down there that has to be taken care of. So we drove the 5 hours, got there quite late at night, which was nice because getting into downtown, found a hotel just a block away where we could actually see Dealey Plaza. And in the morning we went out and took it all in, all the stuff that's there. And some of the things that I didn't realize was that is the inception point for Dallas. Dealey Plaza is named after this guy who was he was a real one of the, what's the term? I'm trying to think of a better term than a father of the city or whatever, but he was a journalist and ran the newspaper, and so he was highly regarded for his journalism, et cetera, et cetera. That's Dealey. But I'm not going to remember in the moment the man and his wife who kind of founded that place, because it was a ford, is where people forded across the Trinity River. The river was called the Trinity River by the Spaniards, and I won't try the Spanish name because I'll butcher it, but the Holy Trinity. It was named after the Holy Trinity. And that was a place that you could ford across the river. And that's where he set up his trading post. And, so that whole story is there, and about then how it became a town. And his younger wife lived even into the early 20th century, I want to think, or the late 19th and 20th century. So she watched it really flourish. So there's all that there. And then there is the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And then you go, and then there's all these freeways and all of this infrastructure and all this flipping concrete where the Trinity River used to be. It's not even there anymore. Now, I found out later that they quote unquote moved it after whatever destruction happened there. So they now have a revived corridor. It's I don't know, some distance away, but there is no river anymore. It's a freeway, and just through those underpasses is a neglected place called Martyrs Park. I'm like, well, what's this? So you go in there, and there's this whole display, this really powerful etched artwork, and what it is doing is commemorating that this was a place that in the mid 19th century, and I'm not going to remember if it was before or after the Civil War, but during the Civil War, I don't know. But there were 3 black men falsely accused of some nonsense. And so there was a lynching that the whole white community came out and had a big party to watch the murder of 3 black men. So, and behind it, here is this glittering city, this dynamic, amazing, steel and glass and stone city, the dynamo of the modern economy. And there's lots of wonderful, good things, I'm sure, in Dallas and Texas. So I'm not trying to, but part of what they as they revived this park, it's kind of a mess. They're doing some work with it. This art installation, there was a writing done, and again, I can't give you the quote and verbatim, but this was done recently by an activist who gave this poem prose of what took place, and what song died in the human heart. What song died in the human heart that people came out to celebrate this horrific murder? And the writer goes on to say, but we are all here now. And the task before us, I'm paraphrasing, but is essentially is to find our way forward, to acknowledge that this too is America. This too is America. So we got our work done, checked out of the hotel. We wanted to get the hell out of Dodge, or Dallas as it is, as it were, for all the traffic, because we were right there, right downtown, this huge metropolis. And we got outside, and I'm pretty well practiced at, clearing the energy of these things. But even when, it seems, I'll just cut to the chase here. It wasn't until we got to, the next destination was only, I don't know, 3 hours, 3.5 hours or something. Oh, maybe more. Maybe that was 5 hours too. I don't know. It's Texas. But when we got to Lyndon Johnson's Memorial Park, or his ranch or whatever, and I realized, and Fenella too, of just how I could use a lot of expletives that some start with never mind. You guys can imagine how messed up, and how much, like the emotion. I just had that moment of emotion come up in remembering how flipping intense and in our shamanic work, we carry this stuff with us until we find a good way to lay it down. Um, and so, yeah, that added to the intensity of these things. But I chose those three places. The next place we went to was an awesome place in Texas, but you'll have to read the book or watch the videos to get the rest of that. Those three places, because it was a progression from this beautiful, natural, high spiritual vibe place, and I will add just one little piece because the Irish Rose Mountain Cabin was run by a really beautiful man who was um, he had Irish heritage, and because he visited Ireland and experienced their hospitality, he wanted to recreate something like that here. And he is um, uh, a Christian, but not a proselytizer, not a Christian in the best sense of the word. And he was um, he was a soldier. He was a musician. So that old Celtic tradition where you can't be a warrior unless you learn how to be a poet first. And he started a Bible study for men, not because he wanted to exclude women, but because he wanted to kind of protect the space for the men. The way he stated is because the women are a lot smarter than us, and that's kind of intimidating. But he was just such a beautiful soul and really represented the best of that. And that group is open to, it's not, you don't have to be this denomination or that. You just need to show up and be. So it was really a wonderful experience. But then that progression from this beautiful mountain, these blue Washitas, and to some of what happened to our native brothers and sisters, and how nature was contained there. It was a beautiful reservoir, but it contained the river. So that was a progression. It's how we've lived. And then you get to all this modernity and which has wonderful aspects, but it also crushes the hell out of nature. And in the process, some of our fellow human beings. And so that gives us a flavor of what this whole journey has been about. So I will pause here. That's a telling of a portion of us putting our star stones in the ground of the dragon on the landscape. And then when we come back from our break, I'll go into the next section. There's one key thing that, I said there was many things that went into the intentions that we were carrying throughout this and will carry all the way to the eclipse time. But and I said that those would be elaborated on later, but I think there's a really important thing that I kind of missed earlier. And that is one of the really, really strong messages from Spirit as we were moving along. And this was like the first leg of the journey. We were going up around Lake Superior and touching in with that, really kind of pristine part of the natural world. And I'm, I should have recorded it, but I was having Fenella try to write, okay, it's this, and then it's this, and it's this. And then kind of going, okay, so let's burn a little more sage. So I want to get, have Spirit come in and see, what pieces what else can we add, or is there something else here that I'm missing, or a way of saying it, whatever. And I remember just glancing out the window and seeing the slightly muted sunlight glittering on the water of this river going over a cascade, and then just peace is central. peace within yourself, within each other, and with the earth. That is the key. And as we went in, and then there are all these other things, of course. But the way that that hit so profoundly, in a way that I don't feel like just saying the words does it. Just the way that that came in. And that's not to deny that there isn't, there will always be conflicts, if you will, and even agitation, and there's destructions and rebirth, because we don't evolve without those things. We don't expand and become more. But that whole essence that is a kind of profound and ineffable, it goes beyond let's have peace between nations. There's something there. So I felt it was important to include that. Now, being aware of our time and that the notes I wrote this morning is, I don't know, it's really probably 3 seminars, and I need to do it in about 40 minutes. So just bear with me as I go through it. I actually, telling the story gives me a few touch points to allow me to perhaps go through this a little more succinctly.
And also, Jeffrey, it strikes me that we should sponsor you to do a workshop, a day workshop in the future once this settles in. So
go for it.
This is the overview, and then this is the overview, and then we'll go in depth. We'll do a hybrid Zoom and in person, I think. Okay, so
great, sounds awesome. All right, so what I want to touch on right now, and you know what, I'm just going to go with this. I'm going to go with what I have, and when it'll be very rich. I'll try to fulfill that promise I make to you. And if I can't get to everything that I prepared, then we'll just leave it there, okay? And there will be a future way to go about it. So, well, and part of my excuse when I gave you that earlier was that there was all this intensity. We got back from the journey, and I got on an airplane, and I went down to, gave a gift to myself to go to Savannah, Georgia, gift for my birthday, to go to this wonderful astrology conference. And then I got off the airplane, and I worked for a day, and I'm doing this. So, but this really flowed. I woke up at 4:30 because that's what I'm used to doing now. So let's start with some ideas about the eclipse, so just to kind of understand more about what energy comes into being, if you will, what transpires. And one concept is that one body passes in front of the other and blocks it, right? That's the moon. By the geometries in the sky, it passes in front of the sun and it blocks it. That's one way of thinking about it, and it's also in terms. It's valid. I'm just going to say that it's valid, but I'm also going to say that it also kind of expresses a sense of, I want to do this in neutrality. Forgive me if this doesn't come across in neutrality, but it's a little bit a part of old consciousness. One of the things when I talk about how we need to, ways in which we can evolve consciousness, is being able to shift our thinking, to lift it up out of the typical dynamics that our minds are honed to, through our educational system and through the cultural traditions, et cetera, that is very rooted in in kind of a lot of times binary choices. It's us and them, and it's linear and so on and so forth. And there's some of that stuff that's very useful. But when we can move to other levels, move our thinking and our language to that. And so I try to practice that a lot. And when we can do that, then we're actually not just thinking differently, but are attuned to the cosmos differently. Because, it's our being that is attuned to the cosmos, and then it has to be, transduced down into thought and then expressed as words. You ever noticed how you might have some wonderful, amazing thought, and there's no way to put it into words? I hope you guys have that experience, because that's higher consciousness kissing you and saying, "Now go tell." And we need other ways. So this is an example where, okay, one body passes in front of the other and it blocks it, and some might think that. But another way is suggestive in kind of the old, the mythological way of where, like, one body takes the other into itself, right? So they merge and become one. When I wrote it originally, I thought, well, one swallows the other, but that's a different connotation. It's the notion of the dynamic of them merging into one. And for my fellow astrologers that are on, we know that there's a whole lot of other complexities going on here as to why an eclipse happens at special times, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to go into that tonight. I'm just going to go into how just the dynamic of what is going on is other levels that it is expressing. And I think, yeah, so when the I am self-editing here, pardon me, because I realize I have to explain a little bit more here. So I'm going to go into the notion again. Some of you already know this, but the planets themselves are, in the solar system, and they're doing what they do. They're in their orbit, and they're doing their thing, and have their own spiritual lessons, like our Mother Earth, et cetera, et cetera. But they're all part of the family of the solar system. And we, as two-leggeds, and one of these planets, as human beings on one of these planets, we are fractals of that whole solar system. So one planet, it has its vibration. It has the wave of its vibration. Mars is about 26 months that it takes to rotate or revolve around the sun. Other planets have their periodicity. And so that's a vibration on a simple level. And in the human being, since we are fractals of that solar system, it's not that the planet is doing something to us. It's the fact that there are aspects of our consciousness, depending on our stage of evolution, that we call archetypes, that are attuned to the same vibration. Let me actually read it the way I wrote it. Planets resonate with archetypal energies within us as humans. We are fractals of the solar system, individually and collectively. Observing the planets allows us to see, quote unquote, to see what is going on within us and anticipate what will or could happen. So It's not that the planet, we use that kind of language because it's stuck in that old paradigm of, this cause and effect paradigm. And I've mentioned some of this before. But what's really going on is that archetype that is Mars, that lives within us, that Mars, that is connected to Mars, it's just co-resonant with it. And so the archetype in us that is Mars, when it comes around, and back in December of 2022, it was occulted by the moon, and we in the Minneapolis area were particularly positioned to see a wonderful apparition of that. I did a whole meditation. It was amazing to see the full moon disappear, or move in front of, rather, Mars in its fullness disappear behind it and then emerge. And one of the amazing things that happened here in that process, I'm out, it was wintertime and it was cold and it was snow, but just the stillness and the blue crystal light, just as if all of nature was waiting in anticipation for this event. And I'm sitting there all bundled up and I'm checking with you can see it with the naked eye, but checking with my binoculars for exactly when, and doing my meditations and my intention, and watching it disappear, and then watching it actually move, the shadows moving as they're filtering through the trees and so on. And then that stillness, just this kind of mystical, etherical, silver blue light on the snow. And out of that stillness, the coyotes, they started howling and yipping in a kind of a, not even a typical, it was just that one of those crazy things. Those of you who know coyotes, they sometimes do this real weird articulation, and then they fell silent again. And I thought, whoa. And I went, well, I wondered if Mars emerged at that moment. And I looked up, like, well, no, maybe I'm not seeing it right. But like a minute or two later, right on time, Mars emerged. But during that period that it was behind it, the two were one. Okay. And when the coyotes howled, it was when the moon became full, exactly to the minute. And I've witnessed this before. I'm privileged to live out where there's a lot of nature, and there's 3 coyote packs within, a 5-mile radius of me, and I hear them. The exact moment. So it is felt. It's not, we don't, we use our ephemeris and we know when it's a quote unquote exact, but with the moon, it's something that's felt within us. And we're not always completely consciousness of it, but nature resonates with that too. That's a little important piece in this, how I'm describing this. But in that moment, the energy that is Mars, so Mars is just out there doing its thing, but the energy within us that we refer to as our planet, our Mars, is that archetypal energy that is is literally movement, to move out, to use our energy and our will to explore, to create our identity, to create, to pursue the heart's desire to be active. That's Mars. And there's many other qualities too, that is about protecting, preserving life. And we know by reputation that there's some other things that can go along with Mars. And so what I read there is that, well, in that particular moment, there was an exactness that took place with the moon becoming full, and the moon brings it's like a transducer that brings it down into embodiment. Everything else that's going on, it's really part of a vibration of the earth. It's independent of us on the one hand, but yet it is what becomes embodied, and therefore is correlates to our emotions and what is felt. So these other planetary energies when we view the solar system, those archetypes, a lot of it comes when we are, especially when we're conscious of it, but it comes when it becomes embodied, it comes through the moon. That's you know. So whatever was going on in Mars at that time, in the sign of Gemini. So if you know the myth of Gemini, of the twins and the mortal and the immortal, and the split and the whatnot, and that goes along with it. So whatever was going on within human beings was brought more into embodiment, whatever stage of development, right? And so one of the things that we're seeing now is what we hadn't seen before in that full moon occultation moment. And the old ways of Mars and dominance, or the old ways of Mars, that of war and dominance, is like it's out there big time for us to look at, and so on. That was a little over a year ago, and it just gives me a little bit of a clue and a way to lead into the fact that when it comes down to, well, when there is an eclipse, that the radiance of life and the central organizing principle that is the sun, that is the energy that is lighting up the whole solar system, the gravity of it, et cetera, et cetera. When the moon passes over it exact, they merge and become one. And it's not that one is blocking the other, but it's coming through the other. And so what does that mean? That the intention of mystery of the sun in Aries on April 8th, and all of its the other relations, as I mentioned before, it'll be an exact alignment with Chiron, that shamanic planet, the wounded healer. So that's all going to come in, and it provides us this potential, if we are conscious, to embody it and to choose in that embodiment a higher vibration by intention. Otherwise, it just happens. It happens all the time. And whatever is there can kind of randomly, what I mean by that, eclipses don't happen all the time, but the planets in their movements and their relations to each other and what they mean and what they represent, it's going on all the time. And most of humanity is unconscious of that, but it tells us that at whatever state of evolution the planetary energy that's involved is, and when this kind of merging, takes place, and then they separate again, they're both changed. And so that gives us one of the clues as to why the exactness of that eclipse can support a really powerful intentionalizing in ways that other new moons do not. So let me see here. Let me check the time. Ooh, okay. The ring planets. Yeah, it's whatever happens comes out of is entirely dependent on the expression of the archetype at that moment in time. And the evolution of the archetype can take place randomly and slowly and in fits of starts. But when we engage with it with consciousness, we're drawing from it, and with consciousness, and again, humility, emphasizing that, and knowing that what we think we might want may not be what we really need. So that's the importance of humility. But certainly, again, the default is you come back to love and compassion, and uh, and gratitude, and there's going to be a certain alignment. There's a lot of things that you don't have to know, that it's in your being, and that helps to bring it about. So by doing this, we can help by the ripple effect that we create through consciousness. Because well, this is a later part, but the more aligned we are, the more the order of magnitude of the ripple effect. If we're relatively unconscious, where most people will be, and it's not a knock on them, it's just how we are in everyday life. We're not, we're operating at at certain levels of consciousness. But the more aligned we are, and the more we're bringing in consciousness, we are amplifying the power of the ripple effect to help move positive energy into the archetypes from which we all draw. Okay? And so let's see, the evolution, the alignment. Yeah, and I've already made this statement about, there's in the future seminars, I'm going to go into more detail and explain how we can use our energy fields, what we kind of already have. You can hone them and refine them and bring them into coherence better. But it's all there. We just don't tend to know exactly how to use them. We in to greatest effect. And actually, by doing that work, we are growing we're expanding our own evolution. We are going through our own stuff that, I talked about what was there in Dallas, Fort Worth, to be brought up and transmuted. Well, we all, have our little wagon that we carry around, that we keep, crap in, that we have to transmute. And going through this process will help you do that. But you don't have to be fully purified to be there. Just show up with your whole being, be humble. Fill your heart with love and compassion. So, so that's a little piece on just that aspect, that the fact that these two out there, I mean, it's an awesome thing to witness, period, because it's like, oh, it's way out there, but it's happening in here and in here at the same time. So the second part that I wanted to cover in brief has to do with another way of amplifying, another way that we amplify our intention and our progression in consciousness. And this has to do with the idea that we really are one with the natural world. And we have, certainly in the Western culture, for the last 400, 500 years, been dismantling that intimate connection. And we can kind of look back and regret or get angry or whatever, but it's where we are. It also has given us some things that are amazing and powerful, but we're kind of past due of putting it back together. And maybe that was all part of a natural process of our evolution. Bottom line is that we are part of the natural intelligence. And if we can view ourselves as in a natural setting, a natural world, if we are a neuron and there are 100 tendrils that reach out, to all of these other tendrils that are neurons, let's say, of hawk, the essence that expresses through hawk. And in between is that synapse between the tendril that we are and that is, hawk with a capital H, the medicine that is hawk. And when we make that connection and the synapse is, the spark activates, we are now connected to this whole brain, if you will, these whole neural networks that amplifies and expands our two-legged presence or awareness beyond what we can imagine. Did that make sense to people? I'm saying it differently than it came through to me, but does that make sense? That when we can connect, when we acknowledge that we are a part of the Dioshvai, the family, the Mitakiapi, of all the family of the beings out there, then can we approach it with all of these other energies with respect? And like any relationship between two people, if you're approaching with respect, and even more so with love and gratitude for the presence of the other person, when you ask something of them, and if they agree with it, they're going to say yes. And it's amplified by everything I just said, that, just because there's love involved. And then it goes exponential, just like a neuron has all of these hundreds of connections. And it's that particular principle or energy that allows us to ask the quartz crystal, which has its own vibration, it has its own energy, it has its own capacity, it has its own essence. And when we are in relationship with it, with all of those things, and we ask it to carry our intention, and then we put it in the ground, it's waiting there to be in partnership with us. Because all of nature is also dependent on us to get our shit together. All of nature, all of the earth will be elevated. They're doing their part, and we have to do ours. So that was a profound lesson that I received 30 some years ago. It's another story, but that, anyway, so that is another principle that I wanted to share, that our intentions can go beyond, the two people, or if, there's a couple of dozen people who show up for our ceremonies down there in Willow Springs, and we do our thing together. Well, we will, when it happens all the way across that eclipse path, it's going to be amplified. The potential is amplified. Keep looking at my clock. Oh, I only have 10 minutes. Yeah, can I already mention the thing about, Vulture, beyond what they do in the physical world about cleaning up dead carcasses, they, in the spirit realm, they do this powerful thing that helps us clean up the dead carcasses of worn out consciousness. So very important part of our process. And what else did I want to say about that? Well, all right, well, let's just move on. There's more in there, but we're just going to move on to the last component here, which is, so what takes place on the land? We know that when these two bodies in our solar system come together, there's emergence, and there is combination of the archetypes that live within us. and then something new comes out of it, you know. Like when two lovers come together, they both leave that union changed, and sometimes something all new is there to grow and develop. But regardless if that happens or not, the two are changed. So there's that, and there's the notion that nature is with us, and the more synapses that we can fire, the stronger, the more powerful the capacity for us to bring about the change we want to live. And um, then, uh, okay, so here's um, this piece is important, and it kind of combines some of the things that you need to back up and describe kind of what happens. We all know this, but it's important that I take a opportunity to re-describe that. Um, One of the things that happens around us, like let's say, let me just want to start. I'm going to start in the evening, just the phenomenon of observing, the sun setting, because I already gave a little description of us approaching the Mount Ida, Blue Ouachita Mountains, and that when things seemed to slow down and settle down, and that the the hue of the sunlight goes to more gold, and things come into more contrast, and there's more colors, and we in our being and our felt, um, well, hopefully, maybe not always, but typically we start settling and becoming more open, and it's as if things can kind of slow down, and it seems like, well, it's just never going to, that the sun is there and it's beaming on us, it's energy, and then it's almost as if it won't ever change, and then suddenly it's gone. It dips below the horizon, and that light is no longer there in the atmosphere. Now, it still might be light out, we know that, but you've moved into a different realm. That source of energy that is moving through, I realize you can't see my hands all the time, because moving through the atmosphere, it is exciting things in the atmosphere. It is affecting the localized geomagnetic aura around us. And we are wired naturally, normally, as diurnal beings. So we're about being active and so on and so forth, and doing our thing. And then when that sun sets and that energy is gone, then what happens? Well, the atmosphere starts to settle in, it cools, it may stratify, it goes through a whole other process, and then things that are of the night, come out. There's a whole new domain, right? And then when we're watching the sunrise in the morning, it starts getting light, and we're anticipating, and we're waiting, and we're waiting, and then all of a sudden, that first sunbeam pops over the horizon, and you can feel it in the landscape. If you've ever been out in quiet meditation and seeing how nature responds, and how just amazing things happen, because that light, that radiance shifts the air, it shifts the local geomagnetic aura, it shifts a whole bunch of things. And that's just on one level. That's just on the physical level. So now let's think about, I already gave you a little bit of a reminder. I'm just reminding us of how we experience these things. But also there's that piece, that the difference about what's going on when it's dark and when it's light. And of course, there are layers to that. Now, think about what happens with us. Let me just check my notes so I don't get too far off. So let me just go into that. So changes start to happen within us, right? The not only is the landscape and everything starting to settle and go into a different realm, but so are we. Our our hormonal balance start to shift to go into a different cycle. We start to become sleepy, and we go into the dream time. And we go into sleep. What happens when we're sleeping? Regeneration. Cells go through this regenerative process. A whole bunch of things go through a reset. Um, and in that dream time, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, but what's going on in the brain is that it's processing everything and putting it into a whole other context. Everything that you experience through the day as you walk around and your aura is bumping into this person or that person, and you barely gave that person a glance and were kind of attracted, but your souls were talking, and so all of that, and those show up in dreams. And there's actually several levels of dreams, chakra processing being one of them. But those are your subconscious integrating. All right. And it's an absolutely necessary part of our process, the nighttime space. So what happens with an eclipse, right? It's something out of the ordinary. What happens is we're as these two bodies out there in the cosmos, we're watching it, and the light is going down slower and slower until suddenly it's gone. It covers the total central disk of the sun. Then what? It shows us things that we can't normally see. The corona of the sun shines forth at its full radiance. All of this, what's going on that all the time, but is there now, visible. It's if we can see the sun's aura as it pushes out all of this energy and matter out into the solar system. So we begin to see what we couldn't see. What happens in a dream time? We see the things we couldn't see. And what is another thing? And what is another thing that happens when the sun is darkened in an eclipse? We see the stars, right? Normally during the day, we see that beautiful blue sky, but that's kind of, we experience it as a dome. But we're going to get to see the background stars. We're going to see our own star in the context of the whole universe. That'll be a mind blower if you're conscious. It's a mind blower, period. It's an amazing experience. You don't have to, I shouldn't keep saying that. Everybody will have an amazing experience, and they'll process it in their own way. They'll go, wow, look at the stars. We can't usually see the background stars where our sun is. It's the star, our star, that has the relationship to the rest of the universe, right? And that star lives in us just as much as we are the earth. So is that the sun. And so that's going to, that allows us to expand and go through a whole other level of experience. And just as I described, well, when we go to sleep, our body regenerates, we process, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this is a moment of time out of time, so to speak. And instead of it just being, 4 minutes of dark, well, if you were to take that ratio, that's only 1/900th of the day compared to, 8 hours that you get to sleep. But it doesn't work that way. It's almost an inverse, because there are several things that are coming together at that moment. So almost an inverse relationship, which means that once again, it's exponentially amplified if you choose to engage with it in a conscious way, or even by intention. That we ask that all of these energies within us, or within the land, within the consciousness of human beings, where there is agreement, be lifted, to be seen, to be transmuted, to be transformed, turned back into creative energy. And Creator, we ask that we can be able to create with this released energy while retaining the wisdom of all that was experienced to create the new way of being, the life that we want to live. And so with that, I'll close out my talk and I'll say Mitakuasa and Wopila. Yamuya.
Thank you. How can we join with you if we're not going to be there in person? What time is it? And because I want to put my intention, because we're not local, we're all, everywhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
good point.
I'll just hone in on you and and be with you there. So
exactly.
How do we do? I mean, I know how to do it, but just describe that. How can we be with you if we can't travel there? In that,
right.
Because you're going to be doing this ceremony that lights up the dragon and clears this across all of that sweep of all the preparation you did. And how can we be, because you're going to be sort of on the back of that dragon standing there going, it begins, right? That's how I see it.
That's really scary.
No, it's wonderful. That's how I see it. So, and I want to, I mean, I'm not going to drive 10.5 hours or fly there, but
right.
Don't count. So how, I want to send my energy there to you to join you in this and support you. So explain how we can do that.
Okay.
In addition to how can people join you there literally too?
Right. Well,
the
joining
nuts and
literally,
bolts.
let me start with that because
okay.
I am doing this as a service. I happily accept donations and a support for the cause. And a few people have already given some money to help because you can imagine it's expensive. But I only ask that to join, that you show up in a good way, and some of the things that I've mentioned. And again, I would gladly accept whatever you have to offer me. However, to be there in person, you need to register for the Music Fest. And it is at Willow Springs. I see that Hope just posted the link, and it is very reasonable. And from everything I can see, I don't know all of these bands, but more hip people like my friend Nathaniel probably does, and obviously Robin does. But that it's going to be great music. But we are going to be. We've already gotten a kind of a special and magical place within that, and are going to be offering a lot of things that will go along with the Music Fest. But to participate, you will need to register with them and prepare to come to camp. And you'll just go to that website and you'll see, right now it's still only $100, but it's still $100 even if you only come for the day. But it's like that's practically a gift in and of itself, as far as I'm concerned. For those of you who go to Shangri-La at Harmony Park, it's a heck of a lot more than that. But and as I said, we will be, over those 4 days, we'll be offering things to anybody who wants, that are going to help us to create the alignment. There'll be more of the trainings of what this technique is, the earth web weaving. If stay tuned on that, because there's a bunch of things that I want to do. I'd like to have people who do sound baths. I'd like to have people who can facilitate some higher brain living activations. I'm going to offer my own healing work and maybe some mini astrology readings and stuff. And again, there's going to be the Music Fest to enjoy. So it's camping. Bring the food that you need. It's generally porta potties. There is some limited shower facilities available, and so on. But check in with Willow Springs for that. Now, for those people who want to tune in from a distance, that is learning this earth web weaving process. because what I've done I've developed this 30 some years ago. It's based on a variety of things that I won't go into right now because really it's going to require some training. If you already have a lot of training with things, it should be fairly simple, but there's specific things. You may have noticed, for those of you who do grounding exercises, that I was pretty specific in naming the layers of the earth. And there's a reason for that, and I'll explain that. And then we use our natural energy bodies to do that, and we can link in. And when I first imagined this, at this point, I should be have a lot more skill and ability with the electronics and, with getting my stuff out there. So, what I imagined is, well, wouldn't it be cool if we had people all along the eclipse path? So if you know somebody else who's going to be somewhere else, I know a lot of people are going to Texas because there's a higher probability of sun shining, but we're working on making sure that those weather gods and goddesses take care of us down there in southern Illinois. And that's where we're going to ride the back of the dragon, as Hope said. So you want to be there. But you can tune in from anywhere. And again, if you know somebody who's going to a different festival or a different location, but they resonate with what we're doing, that too strengthens it, because it'll happen over a period of time that as it enters. And what we will be doing is starting some of these meditations and getting into the space of it beforehand. So like when it hits Mexico, we're already starting to send our energy out, because it's when we get into circle, we create this toroidal field, and then we're using our energy, breathing prana into this dynamo, and then we reinforce it with sacred sites, and we push it out to these places where the 22 star stones are planted in the ground. And then we don't have to really focus on all this intentionality. We just need to be there and do our energy work. And so you can do it here from Minneapolis, and you'll experience 70% you'll experience some diminishing, of the light here. The path of totality in this case is quite wide. It's 151 miles wide. And that was one of the amazing things, if I didn't say it already, is driving through all of this. It's a vast territory, farmlands and wildlands and cities. And, so that part's amazing too. So you can stay in touch through Hope or through me. She's posted my links too, where the trainings will be offered also online and in person for those people who are here, because that really helps. But it's not totally necessary. One of the things I discovered is that it works across space. We use Mama Gaia's body to accomplish great things, as well as our own consciousness. So does that answer the timing, it's April 8th. It's after noon, and you're kind of catching me with flat-footed at the moment, because Robin will know exactly where it happens down there if she doesn't want to volunteer, but she knows the exact time that it's happening in Illinois.
It's at 1:58. It
Okay.
starts at 1:58 p.m. and we last 3 minutes and 50 seconds.
Okay.
Full totality.
Thank you. So, before 2. And it'll be similar up here in the north, and I can assist with some other resources. There's a lot that's been posted about it. So mid-afternoon, early mid-afternoon, around 2. But really, it starts before then, as I said, and then continues for a while afterwards.